Welcome to the last panel of the conference, one of the last panels of the conference entitled Media and Social History. I would like to remind you that the closing session will be here at 3:30, so you're all invited to the closing session as well. We'll have a, I think, 15 minutes closing session where we will wrap up the common themes in the conference. So our first speaker is Yusuf Kanju. Yusuf is at University of Tübingen, Germany, and he is the former director of the National Aleppo Museum. The title of his paper is The Role of Social Media in the Document and Protection of Syrian Cultural Heritage During the Present War. Please. Want to go? Yeah, there? Okay. Sure. So where are my tags here?
Thank you very much. I want to speak about something different from what we saw yesterday and today. My presentation about Syrian heritage and social media. I want to make a question. Can the social media help the protection and documentation of Syrian heritage? Then my title is like a question, and we will see the answer during my presentation. I want to speak first about the introduction about the Syrian heritage, and after that I speak about the situation of Syrian heritage, and finally I speak about the social media and Syrian heritage. This is the place of Syria in the world, and what we see, the Syria is a very important location between the three old continents. This is the location like a crossroad. For this reason, many civilizations came to this. Many civilizations crossed Syria, and when they crossed, when they came, they left their culture in Syria. For this reason, we found a lot, many culture in Syria. In the same time, this is an important place. It was not a good thing for Syria because there are many wars or many battles happen in Syria. Then the Syrian old city destroyed several times in the past. Anyhow, this is very important to understand about the history of Syria. The history of in Syria is very, very long, around more than 1 million years ago. Start the human life in Syria. But also there are continuity from more than 1 million years until now. There are continuity and there are diversity in Syria. We have several culture and all the international civilization like Babylonian, Assyrian, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, all this culture we can find in Syria now. There are there are archaeological sites belong to this international culture. But the most important thing, what is in Syria, there are some historical stage in the human history we can find just in Syria. Like what we see here is the first village. The first when they start the people, the human, when they start to change their style life from nomads to village to permanent style, they start in Syria. And also there are another stage in the history of human when the city's transformation from the city to kingdom. this is the human history we can find just in Syria land. For this reason, the heritage in Syria is very important, not for Syria, for all the humanity. And we will see more about this. For example, this is just an example about the Neolithic Revolution. The Neolithic Revolution is knowledge revolution, not is military or something like that. It's the change of the mentality of a human, when they change, as I said, from the nomad's life to the permanent life. And then with this revolution, the human discovered the agriculture and the domestication of animal. This has happened 10,000 years, and we found this in this, what we see, this is archaeological site, 10,000 BC. We found this evidence for the first agriculture and domestication of animal, and many things came after this. And this is just the first step, which starts, as we see here, in the middle of Euphrates in Syria, and after that came to all the world. This is an example of this revolution, which is one of the oldest village in the world. It's named Jebel Ahmar. As we see, it's Euphrates, and we see there's a very small and very old houses. But we see his very important house is the first communal house, one house for all the village when they come meeting. Anyhow, we can see reconstruct this village as a city. This is one thing is very old. This is the communal house or shrine house, which is one of the most old in the world. Another thing is from this Neolithic Revolution, what we see is a painting. This is one example. We have more examples, but we see this is very simple. It's just a three color, red and black and white. It is natural. It's very simple, but it's very old. It's the oldest painting in the world. Not in the caves, there are another, but it's in the world. It's the oldest example. It is 8,700 BC. As we see, this painting is here in this area. This is also common house, important house for all the village. Another thing also just happened in Syria is the emergency of urban life. Emergency of urban life is not in the city, it is before the city. When they just start, the people construct big building, big street, big storage. Also, we have one of the oldest example in the world. We have just also discovered in Syria around 4003 BC. Another thing important also, beginning of industry and production of olive oil and wine. Also, it's just we start the old evidence in Syria. And this, what I speak before, that is just theoretical speaking. It came from the excavation, archaeological excavation in Syria. In the last 20 years, we have more than 100 archaeological mission working in Syria. We say this is number indicate the mission working in Syria, which is belongs to all the period from the prehistory until now. As I said before, there are continuity in Syria from the prehistory and until now. And it is evidence. It is scientific. It is archaeological evidence. What the international archaeologists, not Syrian archaeologists, they discover this evidence. For this reason, it is very important Syria for all the humanity, not just for Syria. This is the. We show here the three ancient kingdoms in Syria, which is Mari, Ebla, Ogaret. This is go back to 3000 BC, and this is the identity of Syria now. Before this time, it was history for all the humanity, but from 3000 BC and now, maybe it's just for the Syrian people. The Syrian people identity, they think we belong to Mari, Ebla, Ogaret. And now we have in the World Heritage list, we have 6 sites like Aleppo, Old Aleppo, Damascus, Busra, Palmyra. But the bad thing, all this site is in the danger list for the World Heritage. All is the world. There are big destruction. For this reason, the UNESCO decided to put in the red list. What means it is in danger. Okay, now I speak just about the civil war and conflict, which, as you know, started in 2011, and it seems to be peaceful, and quickly they came a very hard, very conflict war and military war between opposition and government. This situation pushed to Syrian people to migrate, to escape from Syria or to all the world, and you know that all this history. And now the Syrian population before the war, it was around 23 million, but now maybe less than the half of the people, they escape outside the Syria. Now the situation of heritage in Syria, we can find all the type of damage, but it can be happen with archaeological site now in Syria. The first type of the damage is the bombing and destruction, and it happened in the old city. Old city, it means like Aleppo or Palmyra. It was heritage site, and we have looting from site and the museum. We have illegal excavation in World Heritage Site too, and modern and the future shelter. But the main idea, or the most important thing, is the big damage happen with the important site. It means if the site is very important, there are big damage. So it's too bad. Very important site is big damage, like what happened in Aleppo or in Palmyra, for example. Anyhow, this is a diagram to explain us which city is more damaged. As I said, the city is important. It is big damage, like Aleppo, Hasaka, Dar'a, Deir ez-Zor, Idlib. This is the city where there are many archaeological sites. Then we have a big damage. And this here we can see the looting is the most damage. By the way, this is just for 2014, just for 1 year. But this is indication how is the situation in Syria. We see the looting, the digging, the combat, illegal construction, etc. This is the damage what is now in the heritage. It's just an example. This is the old city of Aleppo. This is the photo before the conflict. And we see this is the old market, the mosque. Maybe you know very well this is the situation of Aleppo. And we see this is this is the situation, not now, before. It is old photo, but we can see that the destruction. We see the market is completely destruction, which is very close to the mosque. All this, the beautiful domes, it's collapsed. But we see here big damage. Anyhow, we can see what is in the photo. This is not satellite, but we see that the photo. What we see before here. This is what here. But anyway, here is big damage. It's completely destruction. We said it here when the situation is okay, but here everything is destruction. Okay, now I want to speak about the social media and Syrian heritage. The story about this issue, the conflict starts, and the conflict, the military battle, they start in the heritage site, and the social media start to take the photo. But usually, when the conflict happens, the media or the normal media like TV journalists, they're interested in the war, in the political issue, but about the heritage, no, there are no so interested. And after the photo, they came by social media. We saw this damage in the social media. Then we start to take this photo and explain the damage. Then the first step was just by normal people, they take a photo, and after that, the archaeologists, they start to take this photo and explain what happened. And after that, they start the social media specialists with heritage. Before, when the beginning of the war, it was not just the heritage social media. But after maybe 1 year or 6 months, when they start the destruction, they quickly start to it was very important to explain the damage, in particular in the World Heritage Site like Busra or Civilisations, etc. This is one example about the old souk in Aleppo. Also, it is when they started the war, is quickly they burned the market. But the news just came by social media, not by another. We just saw the news. I wasn't this time in Aleppo, but exactly we don't know what happened. It was just the photo. We must trust in the photo from social media because there are no another chance. But anyhow, I was in Aleppo Museum. Aleppo Museum very close to the city, around maybe 1,000 meters. But we try with the government to visit the souk, the mosque, but never we can do that. Now, why we use the social media? I think the answer is very simple because it's very easy to use. It's very important, and also it's very important is out of control. Usually in this conflict in Syria, nobody can speak about what happened exactly. Then the social media can scare from the regime or from opposition. Both they didn't permission to speak about what is damaged, what is happened, in particular about the heritage. And no need many things. It's just mobile camera. They can do everything, and it is free. No need money. And very interesting thing, it can distribute the information very quickly and for so many people. Maybe you know this issue more than me. And all this time it was free. This is another story about the structure of Khusrafiya Mosque. It's very important mosque and the school. It is very important religious and heritage. It is old, maybe 300 or 400 years ago. And very, very beautiful as we see. But suddenly we see in the news and social media, okay? Social media, we saw this is a photo, and nobody said when and how is the collapse. But just we saw in the social media, we want to look. We want to look at what happened. Anyway, the objective of social media is draw attention to the current situation of the Syrian heritage and the importance of protect it, and stop the destruction. Get technical support from local and international, and the most thing is put pressure on the fighting parties and international community, not just the parties fighting, also the international community to help. Academic and economic, and put pressure to the fighting parties. It is very important. Here the question is document the damage by social media. Of course, the archaeological documentation is it is very difficult. It needs many sophisticated technical. But here is a very easy document. Is just to know where is the damage, what is type the damage. And we will see some example. This is an example. Also, Hamdar mosque is very important mosque because they have the minaret is unique in Aleppo and the world. But we see also that came the news by social media, and this is what we see the damage in this minaret. This one example is just by social media, and I want to talk about 3 examples of this social heritage media. One is the Syrian archaeological heritage in Tanjar, and another one is protection of Syrian archaeology and archaeology in Syria. This is one page. This page, every damage, all the damage in Syria you can find in this Facebook page. All this is damage we can find in it. For example, like the damages in the crack in the Chevalier, which is World Heritage. We see this big damage. This page is just work with the photo. Another page, which now is Association for the Syrian Protection, but the mainly work is in the Facebook. For example, this came from the normal social media, the damage in Aleppo Castle, and we see what they're doing. in this page. For example, they explain where is the damage in every part, and this is another example about this, the same page, APSA. This is about the Baal temple, which is destruction by ISIS. And we see this is before and after, and and there are explanations in English, in Arabic, in French. And the team of both this page is Syrian archaeologists, which is not in Syria, outside Syria, in France, or another country, with cooperation with another archaeologist who work in Syria. And sometimes they have collaboration with some people who work who's in the heritage site inside Syria. They take some photo, but usually they take the photo from normal social media and they explain the situation, explain the importance, explain the damage. This is another Facebook page, also archaeology in Syria. In this page, you can find all the news about Syrian heritage, the situation, the academic, everything you can find in this page. And the question also now, the social media, okay, I will finish soon. The social media protection effort, it can be helped. I think the idea is the same. When the social media is speak about the damage in Syria, it means they asking for the help. This is the social media. It can get they got some help. Like this is Association of Observation in Aleppo city, and what we see, this is inside the old the Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo, and we see this is the damage inside the sorry. This is the damage inside the Umayyad Mosque. They get the support to protect the inside mosaic in the mosque. Another example, Muharram Museum, which is unique in Middle East, is just for mosaic. The mosaic inside, you see, this is before the war, but before the building also is very important. It is Ottoman period, is very beautiful. But after the war, it started inside the museum, and we see the mosaic how it is. The photo came by Facebook and by social media. There are YouTube too, and they got support from this is an organization the day after from the United States, and they protected the museum. But as the war not finished, we saw this situation now again, the bombing the museum, and now the situation like that. International community effort to safeguard Syrian heritage. We have several examples. For example, this is ASO Cultural Heritage Initiative. It is from United States government, but the idea is document the damage. And again, by how they made the document, it made report, weekly report about the damage, what happened in Syria, and also the idea is just from social media. They couldn't get photos directly from the site. This is example about the damage in Palmyra by Russian military base inside. They correlated the photo by satellite and with a photo from social media. And there are another project from Syrian archive project from Germany. Also the same idea. They want to make a database for all Syrian heritage, the actual situation, and the past. Okay. I must finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Sharon Smith. Sharon is the program head at Alahan Documentation Center at MIT, and she is the co-director of ArcNet.org. The title of our paper is The Past Demands an Answer, What Becomes of History in the Digital Era.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Aga Khan University and the conference organizers for inviting me. Is this not on? It's okay. Inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to speak to you today. And a bit of a preamble before I start my talk. That's one thing. Yeah, that's right. In earnest, first, I just want to say this is a work in process, and it's part of a larger project. And so I welcome all your feedback, good and bad. Second, in this talk, I will raise more questions than I will answer. And in laying out the polemical state of the field, I hope to encourage discussion.
Well, Sharon, sorry to interrupt, but we will have fire alarm as you hear. Don't go anywhere. You have a speech week, so you have a choice. Sorry.
It's okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
So, I come to this topic as someone who has been actively involved in both the digital era, digital humanities, which I do use quotes, and documenting the Middle East for quite some time, more as the latter as I am an art and architectural historian by training, and the former really only for 5 years as the founding director of AKDC at MIT, which was established in 2011. And at that time, I also became the PI, the project investigator for the role of co-director of ArcNet, a role that I share with my colleague at the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. And ArcNet is our primary dissemination resource. There's ArcNet. Our primary dissemination resource in which our responsibility is for curating and providing intellectual control of the largest, oldest digital repository solely focused on Muslim cultures. As the director of the Aga Khan Documentation Center, it is my mission to present Muslim visual and material culture with historic, cultural, and geographic specificity. As we know, cultural heritage and the built environment throughout the Middle East is at tremendous risk. The ravages of war have become part of our vernacular through the advancements of technology. Inundated by the daily explosion of media from and on the Middle East, presented in rapid fire from a plethora of producers and meant to be consumed wholly and without cognizance of the creator's intent, the context and meaning are lost. In this paper, I will examine the opportunities, constraints, intentions, and consequences, planned or not, of the production, presentation, and dissemination of these materials with focus on the digitization of materials about or from the Middle East writ large and Muslim societies. Digital resources have been growing steadily over the last decade and will continue to proliferate in the future. Enveloped within the larger rubric of digital humanities, digital projects are often read as philanthropic, rightfully praised for increasing researchers' ability to access resources that were once reached only via travel, which was often prohibitive either in cost or access, or for preserving materials no longer extant. One should also be aware of who or what is driving any given project. For too long, digitization or digital projects have escaped the rigors of traditional academic evaluation, resulting in a simplified reading of the digital process and the output. One must critically evaluate the impact of digitization, particularly in terms of the production of knowledge and its attendant effects in the construction of history. But what does it really mean, digital humanities? I just put this up as a distraction. This was digital humanities, so no, just kidding. How is it defined? So data visualization comes to mind immediately. And the output of that can be engaging, amazing, dramatic. But does this, for instance, help you understand the publication points of Voltaire's writings? Or this, a graph of Gelfi users. Gelfi is the most popular free tool for making these types of slides. So does this help you understand their motivation? Probably not, but they're fun to create and fun to see. Truly. The allure of the digital humanities is romantic. It is a global knowledge network. It is the utopian vision of shared culture, knowledge, and semantic content. It is a feel-good, warm and fuzzy. Some have even called it, and its practitioners, nice. Nice is not a word typically associated with academia, where digital humanities has become a young but legitimate field of study. In a blog post from 2014, it was asserted that people, this quote, people in the digital humanities are nice, unquote. What does nice mean vis-a-vis a serious scholarly endeavor? In fleshing out the notion of nice, the author continued with stating that digital humanities is nice because they, and they, I assume, are the practitioners, are more concerned with method than with theory. I'm not sure what that means. Frankly, from my perspective, and I'm not alone in this thought, digital humanities is really simply humanities of our time. A comment I heard more than once, and one that is particularly irksome, so nobody say it, is that in our time, one engaged in liberal arts, humanities, art history, linguistics, etc., must learn to code to remain a vital part of the academic community. I completely disagree. In today's world, we must collaborate to achieve great things. This is another opportunity for collaboration. It's highly interdisciplinary. For those of us in the humanities, even could be described as interdisciplinary, as we rarely found reason to engage with technologists, engineers, or programmers to any degree in the good old days. Some of what has been, So what are some of the benefits of this nice field of digital humanities? Immediately apparent to most is the role of digital humanities and associated projects can play in the realm of social justice. This is kind of out of order, but we're talking about social justice, and what Yusuf just talked about. The revolution has been digitized, and we need to find a way to actually capture social media as part of the larger project for digital humanities. We'll go into it in a second. So clearly, the use of such media, what we would now call part of digital humanities, helped my colleague, mentor, and friend Andras Riedelmeier, who is from Akpia Harvard University, when he testified at The Hague regarding the systematic eradication of cultural monuments and destruction of cultural heritage in Bosnia-Herzegovina during the war. His pioneering work set standards for such cases. And a bit of a side note here, these are some of the examples that he used when he was at The Hague, in which he testified 10 times. A side note here of tremendous import to the emerging field is not only the viability of such projects, but the sustainability of these projects. And in the digital realm, many things just simply disappear. Preservation is typically not paramount when creating or proposing projects, because preservation, storage, they're hard, and they're expensive, and they're complicated. In some ways, they are the antithesis of often thought transitory nature of some projects. So what we've done with Andras's work from The Hague was because we're thinking about this on a very grand scale. For Andras's work, we're compiling it. It's a collection on ArcNet. It's open access, free download, free. Everything that we have is open access and freely available to anyone to use. And so his pioneering work will not fade away because it will just continue to be added to in ArcNet as documents become released from The Hague. They will go in here, including gray literature, which is often difficult to find. And these are fully downloadable. That's one of his reports. Today, when many of the digital humanity projects we see are focused on the horrible war in the Middle East, I think we must be careful how we view ourselves in these projects. Too often, the notion that we, and we being broadly the West, are feverishly working to document the destruction of sites in Syria, for example, with heavy focus on the destruction of antiquity, the ruination of the ruins, and what exactly are the implications of that, without agenda should be suspect. As Yasser Tabah recently posted on his Facebook feed, the destruction of art is becoming the hot new thing in art history. And sadly, there is truth to his statement. And I'm just showing a variety of shots of the reconstruction of the Palmyra Gate through 3D printing. And the one in London and then New York. Too often, the hot new thing is to frantically recreate cultural heritage sites by any means possible. But again, too often, these play out a narrative assigned and reassigned by others, others being the West again, played out without the local voice, depriving the locals of defining their own history, their own loss, and their own identity. I'm sure some of you may have read Sarah Bond's provocative article in Forbes about 2 months ago, where she talked about the title, The Ethics of 3D Printing of Syrian Cultural Heritage, where she stated, quote, In the field of cultural heritage, debate has surrounded the newly unveiled replica of Palmyra's monumental Roman arch in New York City City Hall Park. Many question whether the 3D replica truly celebrates the antiquities of Syria and defies the destructive actions of ISIS, or is it a form of digital colonialism? And for me, that made sense, and I thought everyone needed to take notice of this notion. Digital colonialism can be perceived as the use of all these images we're collecting to document a now destroyed ruin in the current craze to recreate through the digital cultural signifiers. This image just really bothered me. I don't know why. Seems wrong. While most certainly of good intent, the placement of 3D printed arches in Palmyra, from Palmyra, in random settings, be they parks, squares, etc., without its context, is heading down a slippery slope toward digital colonialization, and fast, I believe. And of course, the much talked about digital divide is another contributing factor to this colonialization process, and some of you have already spoken about the very real social and economic inequities of the digital era and their effects. Possibly worse, could this be part of another phenomenon identified recently with the extraordinarily loaded phrase of ruin porn? And these two notions, digital colonialism and ruin porn, are not exclusive. As offensive and reductive as that term sounds to us, is it true? Have we become addicted to ruin porn or destruction porn? We, again, capital W, West. What are the effects of the day-to-day barrage of these images and this information, no longer measured by days or months, but by decades? We use it, media representations of death, destruction, devastation, willingly and willfully in teaching, art, in art, and even casually on social media, and I don't have an answer to that right now. But continue with Bond's article and discussion of ethics, would our work in digital humanities be better framed as a question of ethics? And what do I mean by that? Digital humanity producers operate through a web of politics, people, and institutions, a network of uneven relationships. Yes, power and production again. We must be accounted for, and yes, ethics are at play and should frame and should question our intent. A caveat here on this particular project, I admit that I have supported this project. I've participated in this project, so I have participated in these projects that I am now questioning. When I agreed to participate in this, I truly believe they had a pedagogical meaning and usefulness, and I'm not saying that it doesn't. But later, when I started seeing the similar patterns being replicated throughout the West, I really began to think critically about these actions in a different light. Is it wrong? Is it right? Is it pedagogical? At this moment in time, the jury is still out. But I do approach such projects and view others now with a more critical eye. One cannot deny the asymmetry of points of production vis-a-vis the points of destruction. With regard to the critical eye and critique in general, this is a series of shots of the real one, sorry. I think I should have put those before, but I'll go on. Generally, critique in general, it's been missing in the digital humanities. I alluded to that earlier in this paper when I said digital resources have grown steadily over the last decade and will continue to proliferate in the future, and that they're enveloped within the larger rubric of digital humanities. Digital projects are most often read as philanthropic. Critique needs to be more common, more penetrating, indeed a normative process within digital humanities production. Please note that I am certainly not dismissing the genuine need for documenting of what can be considered no less than war crimes against people, cultural heritage, and the built environment occurring in places such as Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Yemen, etc. And as I speak today, there are sadly too many to list. So what do we do? These images that I just showed you, by the way, I should explain a bit. These are images taken from ArcNet. They are used in part of the documentation of the site in Palmyra, and they're accessible to anyone who'd like to use them. Okay. So what can we do? We know the revolution has been digitized. Just an example from ArcNet, how we contextualize things, sorry. Not only images, but in ways never thought of a decade ago. I touched on it briefly. We need to capture these new media that are out there and that are ephemeral and transitory, and that's a different paper. I'm not going to talk about that. We know roughly what we want digital humanities to do with regard to the disruption of the Middle East, but how do we get there from here? Digital humanities and those who practice it are still engaged in humanities. Art historians, linguists, and so on. The tried and true praxis should remain in place. As historians, we all remember what scholars such as Mark Bloch or E.H. Carr and others told us, to navigate history-making events with as little judgment as we can. Sorry. Knowing full well that we can never be removed. Historians are never removed from their topic. We all come with prepossessed notions, with bias, as much as we try not to. In moments of great social injustice, it is impossible not to. Having said all that, and that's a lot, what is my point? My point is to continue on, to continue documenting material and visual culture of Muslim societies yesterday, today, tomorrow, and while documenting the current destruction, as we do in our database, and it enhances the narrative and contextualizes the story, and must be included, we must not forget to capture visual material culture that quietly slips away. There's an urgency now, but there was always a need. We have things that are altered by nature, simply there then, and they're not now. We also need to capture those things. So these things can also be found on ArcNet. And I just want to make sure that we do have this urgency and this need, but we don't want to forget the bigger picture. So in conclusion, yes, we need digital humanities now, but we needed collections always. And it's the capital H in humanities, in the digital humanities, that brings context, meaning to often misconstrued huge photo albums that are really dumps of images that do not legitimize anything, and they truly obfuscate meaning. These projects that are non-project based and just for the sake of digital, they must be stopped. The myopic focus on tools and technology in some of our esteemed institutions must be broadened to recognize the necessity of context and curation for these projects to hold pedagogical work. Let's privilege theory over method with critique, content, context, and meaning. In addition, some models, knowledge, intellectual property, ownership, scholar, architect, whatever is hero, must be broken. No longer can one person or one institution claim sole ownership. As radical as it sounds to some, we must consider partnering, sharing, and collaborating because the quantity of data is too great and the quality too easily manipulated for personal, political, or state gain, even if it means we are no longer nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Our last speaker is Sarah Hamdar. Sarah is a PhD candidate at Goldsmiths College, University of London. The title of her paper is Hizbullah, Media, and Collective Identity. Sarah.
Hi. So I'm going to move something completely different, religion and politics. And okay, so this paper is based on field work that I conducted in Beirut in 2014, and any notes on mediated rituals are actually based on viewing the YouTube channel and the internet live streaming of Hizbullah's Al-Manar television station. This paper is part of a very, very large chapter, so with regard to the ritual, it's only exploring the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more going on. To commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein during the Battle of Karbala in 680 AD, Hizbullah, a religio-political party, organizes for the period of 9 days in multiple Hizbullah-controlled areas in Lebanon, majalis or ritual gatherings. During such assemblies in Beirut, attendees gather to listen to Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah, Hizbullah Secretary General, give a religious speech. This is followed by Ali Slim, Hizbullah's official Majlis leader, performing a mournful recitation of the historical event. In the last segment, the young male attendees stand up and beat their chest in a rhythmic fashion, mimicking the reciter's stanzas, as the unified beats and the unified voices of the men fill the room. However, the pinnacle of the rituals take place on the 10th day Masira, or rally, where following Nasrullah's calls for participation the night before, men, women, and children gather to listen to the narration of the tragic moment of Hussein's death. The men and women then walk in opposite directions, chanting their love for Hussein and his sister Zainab, and finally gather to listen to Nasrullah's final speech for the occasion, and which is typically of a political nature. The above descriptions are Hizbullah's Muharram rituals. However, it should be noted that Ashura rituals in the Middle East more or less follow the same structure. Such gatherings have throughout played a significant position in Shia circles and have been the subject of intense research for the role that they play, as a vehicle for declaring one's love for Imam Hussein, as a method for keeping the Karbala memory alive, and a narrative to explain present-day injustice. In my own research, I study the above factors within the political Shia group Hizbullah, as well as the rituals acting as a political platform through which the party displays its powers, asserts the position and importance of its fighters, and through which it addresses the latest political issues. However, it's not these aspects that this paper is concerned with, but rather Hizbullah's mediated rituals that are broadcast live on Al-Manar, Hizbullah's official television station, as well as through internet live streaming. Drawing on the theories of Diane and Katz 1992 and Nick Houdry 2003, it analyzes the importance of the live mediated rituals and translating the collectivity generated in attending rituals in person for those who cannot be physically present, as it allows distant participants to feel as if they are there. It studies the techniques that Al-Manar's cameras have adopted to translate the energy that is established within the physical gatherings, and in this way analyzes the centrality of Hizbullah's media in establishing and maintaining collective Shia identity within a sectarian system. Before the mediated rituals are explored, however, I'm just going to give a brief overview on the theories of Emil Durkheim, which my own research draws heavily on, before I move on to Diana Katz and Houdry. Writing in 1912, Durkheim saw religion as an eminently social thing that unites those who believe and practice similarly into a single moral community called a church. Thus, religion to Durkheim is a collective thing whereby it unifies the group under the banner of common faith. Rites serve to assemble the group for a common action, thereby arousing the feelings and ideas that not only link past and present, but also maintain and emphasize what they share collectively. It's also through the simple yet powerful act of assembling that the exalted energy that Durkheim terms effervescence is generated. This state intensifies passions for the collective cause, uplifts the moral life, reminds participants of their group solidarity, and drives them into action. I witnessed such effervescence in Hizbullah's majalis held in the Master of Martyr complex in the heart of Dahia during the 2014 rituals, as part of my participant observation. Not only did attendees bow their heads together in mourning, they also wept together, as the weeping followed a specific pattern in response to the recitation. More importantly, in the final 20 minutes, when the young men lined up to beat their chest to a rhythmic lamentation, the energy in the complex was noticeably high. With the raised arms and the sounds of the men who chanted along with the Latin reciter, the men had to be reminded to beat their chests ala mahal, or slowly, as many got overly excited. But what happens to such collective emotions and effervescence when the rituals are mediated? In 1983, Benedict Anderson wrote about the notion of the imagined community that's not only created through the modern nation, but also through media outlets, specifically newspapers, books, and journals. To Anderson, the print media allows for a sense of collective imagination, whereby individuals become capable of experiencing similarities at the same time, hence maintaining a sense of togetherness. Following the advent of television, Anderson's theories of the imagined community were applied onto television by Diane and Katz 1992, whose exploration of mediated rituals are based on the strongest formulation of neo-Durkheimian position in current media research. Their position sees mediated rituals as media events through which a common space is created to foster collectivity. To briefly define media events, they are the broadcasting of live public events and which can be viewed by a large audience. They are pre-planned and advertised, interrupt regular broadcasting routine, electrify audiences, and aim at integrating societies in a collective heartbeat and evoking a renewal of loyalty to the society and its legitimate authority. They unite the audience under shared social values and thus unite them to their society. By allowing those watching at home to feel as if they are there, they transform the home into a semi-public space for the duration of the event through the gathering of people in front of their television. The knowledge that the event is simultaneously viewed by others creates a sense of collective participation. Coolidge 2003 similarly points out that the strength of live television lies in its ability to project a traditional ritual, thus allowing it to stretch across various locations simultaneously. The viewer is connected with real events that ties them into the exact moment of the ritual is practiced, and thereby guarantees a potential connection to our shared social realities as they are happening. So, based on the above theorists, Al-Manar's live broadcasting transports those who are not physically present in the complex and allows the rituals to be performed in synchrony in multiple locations via different media. With the different media here referring to the television, computer, or whatever electronic one is viewing the rituals through. The viewer, and I recall my mother's own tears as she viewed Al-Manar every night during Ashura, is capable of sharing in the grief of those present in the complex as those at home lower their head and slowly perform latam. Through remote attendance, solidarity is achieved over simultaneous grief, thereby affirming one's values and belonging to the mourning group. Here it's worth drawing on an excerpt from Sumyala 2013 that states, "As a Finnish citizen, I may feel Finnish when I'm watching a televised ice hockey match on holiday in Thailand. People living in these deterritorialized communities may maintain strong national bonds towards their compatriots through highly mediatized communication. What's common to all of us, whether we are American, British, etc., is that we experience our nationality characteristically via mediated and mediatized symbols and symbolic communication." But is the watching of a live event enough to create collectivity, or do Hizbullah's cameras elevate the experience? In the next section, I analyze the methods that have been adopted to enhance the experiences of those at home. I begin with the majalis before I move on to the masiras. During Hizbullah's majalis, attendees gather to collectively commemorate the Karbala battle. Yet for the duration of the opening speech, when I physically attended in 2014, I noticed the young students who bundled together to finish their homework, those who gathered to chat or even gossip, and those who performed their night prayers. In the mediation of the speeches, however, there was no trace of such chatting or the diverse activities that were taking place. In fact, on Al-Manar, the noise of the attendees is muted, with only Nasrullah's voice broadcast, thereby giving significance to his words while simultaneously drawing in the home viewer. The camera, however, occasionally zooms in onto the engaged male faces whose voices are suddenly unmuted when they stand to declare their collective loyalty to Hussein, Zainab, Nasrullah, or Hizbullah. In addition, camera techniques and focus elevate the mourning experiences of those at home. While Nasrullah repeatedly stresses the importance of physically attending rituals as they are more successful in eliciting emotions, those attending from distant places are also brought into emotional processes. For one, during the morning recitation, the camera moves slowly among the attendees to mimic the grieving voice of Ali Slim and zooms onto the faces of those in intense mourning to remind those at home of the collective grief that they should share. This careful translation of emotions is again applied onto different shots as the camera blurs in and out, also in slow motion, rather than move abruptly between shots. To move to another technique in certain moments of the lamentation, when the narrator is recalling specific instances of the Karbala battle, cameras zoom onto the images that are present within the complex. As we can see from this image, they are at the far end of over there, and they are on two different sides within the complex. With their dramatic colors, the mood of the event through these images are visualized and thus aids in transporting the attendees to the Karbala scene, complete with a desert landscape. Thus, the act of remembering is not only verbally recalled and mentally imagined, but also visualized, thereby providing a heightened impact in the remembering process. So by focusing on the images at the exact moment that Ali Slim is narrating the incident, as the camera does over here, the cameras bring distant viewers to the complex by showing them the exact scenes that the physical attendees observe or can observe. During the latam, however, camera activities change. A group-oriented and vigorous activity, cameras here move with a slightly faster speed, mimicking the energy of the activity, and focus on long shots rather than on individual faces, thereby translating the group nature of the activity. And while the lamentation period captured the illustrations and the complex, during the 2015 mediated rituals, cameras captured the Latmiya script that was written on the screens present in the complex, thereby allowing new attendees, both those that are physically present and distant viewers, to join in. As such, the collectivity of the physical act is again translated to those at home who chant along and slightly perform latam. Now to move on to the 10th day Masiras. As mentioned above, these take place in multiple Hizbullah-controlled areas such as Baalbek and the Bika, Tyre and Sur, and Dahya and Beirut. As such, those physically attending not only experience one of the mentioned locations only, but also a small segment of it. For example, when attending the 2014 Masira in Dahya, my observation was limited to the women's Masira only, and I was not capable of listening to Nasrullah's final speech, which had already begun well before I reached the end. However, for those participating through the media, the Masira is experienced in what Diane and Katz term as totality. In the case of Hizbullah, I'm not saying that in the totality this means that the cameras capture every single raw activity. In fact, this is far from the case. I use totality here to refer to the ability of the television or internet viewer to observe the Masira in more than one location and from more than one angle. For example, this shot is different locations within the Beirut-Dahya Masira. In addition, Hizbullah's cameras capture the rallies taking place in the above areas, such as this is from Baalbek and this is from Sur. It also captures the different sections in Dahya, not just long shots, but in terms of this is the scout section, this is the Hizbullah member section, and you have the women's section, though they're capturing a lot of the different activities that are taking place. But while the locations and angles are different, in the 2016 mediated rituals, a significant addition was implemented: unified lamentation and music. In previous years, when cameras moved about capturing different locations and segments, viewers could hear the sounds that were taking place in the exact shot that was being captured. In the 2016 Masira that took place only a couple of weeks ago, however, in the majority of the broadcasting, the voice of one reciter was implemented onto all the Masiras, even though that's not the case. In addition, in large segments of the televised rituals, a melancholic yet soothing music dominated to unify the different recitations and places. Thus, viewers did not encounter a disorganized mediated ritual, but rather a structured and unified one, thereby drawing them in. In a similar manner, one can argue that those attending via television experience an elevated ritual participation. As Diane and Katz argue, while attending rituals can often be physically chaotic and messy, the same rituals on television tend to be characterized by an almost pedantic concern with unity of time, and of course, unity of action. To reflect on my own physical attendance versus the live mediated rituals, this without doubt rings true. For example, on Al-Manar, there is no trace of the shoving and pushing that I personally encountered during the Masira. There is also no trace of the bickering that I witnessed on the 9th night in the Majlis in the women's section, which was on the verge of turning physical, because one was blocking the other's view of Nasrullah on screen. What's captured instead is the intense organization, the collective act of lowering one's head, the unified latam of the men, the unified voices chanting Labbaika ya Hussein and Labbaika ya Nasrullah, and the unified arms stretching into the air. That in addition to the tens of thousands who are able to make it on time to hear Nasrullah's final speech. Such acts are further enhanced by Al-Manar's cameras, which again focus on long shots rather than on individual faces, thereby emphasizing the unity of the assemblies. To those viewing from behind a screen, the unity and organization portrayed without doubt allows them an elevated experience. But while the above section analyzed the mediated rituals broadcast on Al-Manar, it's pertinent to point out that those physically attending also experience a mediated ritual. For when Nasrullah gives his speech on every other night in the complex, he does so through a large screen for security reasons. And when he does appear in person, which is there he is over there, the screens are actually needed as well, because so that those at the far end of the complex can actually see him. So the screen is not limited to the home television or computer or whatever format one views the rituals through, but is also a vital element within physical gatherings as well. As such, both physical attendees and distant viewers actually encounter a mediated experience. But are the rituals always understood in the positive collective manner portrayed above? That's a question I ask. As Coudry argues, Diane and Katz's assumption that media events always have positive hegemonic effects is rather limited, as there are always dissenters or apathetic bystanders. Taking the example of Princess Diana's funeral, which Diane and Katz draw on, Coudry reasons that not only did a number of people not watch, but also many did not experience the grief that was projected in the televising of such an event, thereby falling short of the act of integrating society that Diane and Katz claim. Another critique offered by Coudry is one that is based on Stephen Luke's 1975 argument against the Durkheimian perspective, and which sees that they overlook rituals that oppose society's value systems or which exasperate social conflict, or which do not achieve a stable hegemonic interpretation against the intentions of their producers. In the case of Hizbullah's Ashura gatherings, both Lebanese non-Shias as well as Shias disapprove of them and opt out of physically attending and viewing altogether. And in line with Coudry's second point, Ashura rituals are in many cases viewed as opposing society's values. To non-Shias, they are understood as an act of political threat, and in the case of Shia, it's because they are simply not religious or because they would rather participate in a purely religious activity rather than Hizbullah's politicized ones. So while this paper analyzes the role of Hizbullah's media in connecting Shias in separate locations to real events and in building and maintaining a collective identity through the sharing of a common virtual space, emotions, and reality, the media itself is not enough to do so. As Lumby 2011 clarifies, online interactions are secondary to offline face-to-face ones, with the former acting as extensions to offline interactions. As such, those who are religiously active on the internet, for example, are typically religiously active offline as well. However, the offline religious reality of Shias in the Lebanese scene, or any other religious or sectarian group for that matter, is not always the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for this very interesting presentation. We have about 25 minutes for questions and comments. I would kindly ask you to state your name and affiliation before asking a question, and I would also ask you to keep them brief. So, yes, we have a question.
Omar Ghazli, I'm a lecturer at the University of Sheffield. I have a question to Sarah. Thank you, this was really interesting.
Thank you.
The question basically is why are you using Diane and Katz in a way? Because I think so. Maybe it's a comment and then a question. Because I think it's in a way might be holding back your analysis, because I don't know. Like, I think what you're doing is much richer than what their theoretical framework has to offer, and especially that the Ashura media events, they are annual and they are multiple. And if you look only at Hizbullah's Ashura spectacle or media event, they change. They're changing with the political role of Hizbullah, with basically what they're seeking to, how they're seeking to present themselves, and so there's that part. And or if you compare it to other, let's say the Amal Ashura mediation, you can also find a lot of details in the practices of mediation, which I don't think the media events framework is sensitive to these subtleties. So I think you're doing, I don't know, much better work than. So that theoretical framework might be holding you back. That's, I don't know, a comment.
Thank you. Would you have like someone specific that?
But even if you go with Coudry, like the idea of media.
Please use the microphone.
Like I think like you're already talking about it through, let's say, media practices, which is not only Coudry, but a tradition of looking at what people do with the media rather than media as text. Because media events is looking at media as just like we already know that this is a media event. And I think the contribution would be in the details of how it's changing across time, technology, and political context.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. I'll definitely take that into consideration. But I actually went with both Diane and Kat and Poudry, and I thought maybe it would they would work together to present a complete image. But I think I went with Diane and Kat because they actually work on rituals as well in that aspect in their media events. But thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Any other questions? Yes, Mohammed, please go ahead.
I'm alone.
Of course.
Okay. My question is both to Yusuf and to Sharon. So, Yusuf, do we have any kind of, we are, as we see that you are presenting that social media have an important role in informing the international and local people about what's happening in Syria. But do we have any kind of comment on the response from the international community or from, I know that you showed some initiatives like ASU, but on the ground, was there any kind of effect that helped protecting some sides? And for Sharon, I would like to ask you really about, that article that was really drawing attention and asking crucial questions about this new culture of 3D reconstructions of all the lost heritage around the world. So do you have any sense of some people they are putting all these new developments for digital archaeology in terms of colonization or new colonization for the efforts around the world. And we saw the contestations over the role of who controls Palmyra now, and the reactions from the West, let's say, like against the Russians' attempt to retake back Palmyra, that it was a kind of more destructive than to protect the Palmyra side. So do you really kind of put the digitization of the humanities in that kind of direction, or do you think something else should be considered?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think the main idea for my presentation is usually the social media, when present the situation, the current situation is asking for support, asking for support and to stop the destruction. The support must be from international community. As I show in my presentation, the Syrian heritage not just for Syrian, it's for all the humanity. And the excavation done in Syria is done by international team, international archaeologists from all the world. In Syria, we have missions from Australia, from United States, from England, from France. All the world is working in Syria. Not is work Syrian work, or not for Syrian identity, it's for the humanity. For this reason, we ask the support. Also, the reason for ask support, now the regime or opposition, they're not interested in the heritage. They're interested in another thing. They're interested in fighting, in political issue, but the heritage protection, they don't care, nothing. For this reason, all the time we're asking, but what we got until now is, I can say frankly, is nothing or very few. Because for also there are many reasons. Political reason, the type of the war, because it's a field war, not easy to get a project, but the most thing, all the international organization like UNESCO or other, they said they must wait until finish the war. And to finish the war, nobody knows when they finish the war, and after they stop the war is maybe we lost many things. Then we need urgent assistance, urgent help, but we couldn't get. We have UNESCO. We have very big project from European Union, very big project to protect the Syrian heritage. But what they did is just training, just lecture from Beirut. Never they can go to the directly to the site or to the museum. maybe I didn't say that the museum in Syria, all it is the infrastructure of the museum is destroyed. The collection is okay, but all that need help. What is not exactly arrived, very few things arrived exactly to site and to the museum.
Sharon? What was your question? I'm sorry. So
it's about the colonialization aspects of the humanity digitalization.
Well, I think that some of the sort of colonization aspects of it are because people are going into these projects without a framework or thinking. They're just putting it out, and then they use it in ways that do not help the local, do not give the local voice. And it's not just Palmyra. Palmyra in particular, because that has become sort of the icon that the West is using to represent all of the death and destruction in Syria. I mean, I don't have many questions or answers. I have many questions, no answers. I think that we should raise a question about why Palmyra, why the arch, why is that acceptable and a school or a hospital is not. Yesterday we heard about the little boy who washed up dead on the beach, and for a moment there was a humanitarian response to the migrants. He wasn't a migrant, he was a refugee, and it was murder, really. But this is quickly gone out of the Western media, and we focus again on Palmyra's arch. That's all we look at. And it's very clean, and it's very tidy, and none of these things are true. So I just question why you use that as your sort of icon to represent Syria and not actually something that is maybe more powerful in my mind. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Any more questions, comments?
I just wanted to make a follow-up comment. Do you think that they use the arch because it's ancient? It has nothing to do with Muslims, with what's going on in Syria, ISIL. It's like the pyramids, in Egypt. You always see them.
Right.
And they're so far back, and it's an image, and it's clean, as you said. It's clean of the messiness of the issues of today.
That's right.
And maybe that's why, it's sort of an easy way to refer to the fact that, okay, we care. We care about that arch, which is 10,000 years old.
Right, right. And like the pyramids, pre-Islamic, and the situation right now, the people that we're talking about who are dying are Muslims.
Yeah.
I think there is something to that. I think that the West's notion to show that they care, and I'm sure they do care. I don't think they mean this in an ill way, but it is easier to wrap their heads around an ancient site that, yes, represents Syria's large, long history in the world, and it's important. But it distracts from what really is happening in Syria, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Can I just disagree slightly with that?
Sure. Can you wait for the microphone, please?
I don't think it distracts at all from what's happening in Syria. We have wall-to-wall coverage of the war in Syria. What we're talking about here, surely, are some of the greatest artifacts and architectural and cultural artifacts known to mankind in one of its ancient countries. That surely has a value, because this is about the destruction of heritage, the destruction of what has made our society, our culture, our world, what it is today. We are products of our past. And so when we see images of suffering of the war every single day, we don't see the arch every day. The arch is a very, very important symbol. I've been to Palmyra, and it is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And if we're saying, I just think it's a slightly fallacious argument to say, oh, it's an old building, it's pre-Islamic, no one cares. What about
That's not what I'm saying, though.
But it's kind of implicit, and people do care. Believe me, people do care about what's happening in Syria a lot. But I don't think that should be the expense of something as important, as symbolic, as the destruction of valuable and unique artifacts. And just one addendum to that. In the north of Sudan, there's a systematic attempt to wipe out pre-Islamic culture by the rather unpleasant government, which calls itself Islamic, but it isn't really. But they are systematically wiping out and persecuting people who don't subscribe to their culture. So, you know, that is a systematic attempt to take attention away from other human rights abuses that are taking place throughout that country. But I just think it has to be slightly measured here and slightly balanced. And you know, to come back to Palmyra finally, you know, let's not assume that just because we care about some of the world's greatest artifacts, we don't care about schools and hospitals. I'm just asking for balance, really.
Thank you, David.
Philip?
Thank you.
Do you have another? Do you want to comment on that, Sharon?
No, I
Okay.
your point is
Can I
taken.
comment on that?
Well, it's Philip's turn now. You're the next.
Thank you very much. It's very good, nice and see. There's another comment about Palmyra, and I hope this isn't going too far away from the topic, but it's a sort of a notion of another way of reading Palmyra, which sort of, I'm not necessarily claiming that this is what all media sources have done with Palmyra, it's just a suggestion about what might be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I sense that an advantage of Palmyra to anyone who wants to use it as a symbol of destruction is that as a pre-Islamic site, you can represent Syria without dividing the population along sectarian lines. So it does have that advantage of saying, actually, we can care about the whole of a space. And the problem, one of the problems with showing the destruction of a church or the destruction of a mosque is you might seem to mean that only one community matters. And I think in the same sense that various Syrian regimes have used Palmyra as a way of appealing to a united Syrian past. I wonder if that's one motivation for using Palmyra, and I think that's a positive one. I think that's a way of telling a story, saying this is an important site of civilization. It's something distinctive to Syria, something only Syria has, but it's also something that is interlaced with the classical histories that people are conscious of all across the Mediterranean.
No, I get that, yeah.
So it's just a sort of, it has that, to my mind, that's a positive sort of multi-layered way of using that symbol. But the other point, if I may, is that what has interested me in the way the news coverage has worked is that we never hear about Hatra. And that it's certainly, all those things could also be said about Hatra, and yet we never hear about it, and the destruction by ISIS in Hatra is probably much more significant.
Why do you think that is?
Why didn't we hear about it?
Yes.
Well, partly I think that there wasn't Western tourism to Hatra. Partly that the archaeological reports were never published. Partly that Hatran material was not visible in international museums. So if you wanted to see Hatran material, you could only see it in Iraq. Very few people can read Hatran.
Yeah.
So there's only one major monograph on the subject.
Right.
As far as I'm aware, and most of the publication is in Iraqi journals in Arabic, which are very hard to acquire outside the country. So and yet I think, in destroying Hatra, ISIS are affecting the way that a post-war Iraq can build a new history for itself that doesn't rely on a sectarian narrative and can have a non-religious narrative for its past.
We had a comment here. Would you like to comment?
Okay, almost covered, but I just want to say that it is.
Could you please speak?
Yes, Palmyra and the rest of historical sites in Syria is not only history, it's part of the modern identity of Syria, and this is what confirming its diversity. This is Syria is not only the Islamic era, this is very short in terms of the whole history, and I think what gives Syria its importance now and its identity is not only also the people. It's not like stone and people, it is more than stone. This is the people themselves, and this is what can create their identity and can even show them maybe a different and better future. Lots of gods passed through Syria, and lots of prophets, and lots of holy books. So Syria all this should be preserved equally. And in this stage, I think that past is more important than Muslim past, because that one is the one under threat completely. So I just find it very difficult to understand why in the Western media the coverage of historical Syria follow very much the Western politics, what is important and what is not important, they decide. Is Ma'lula wasn't important at the beginning, but then after it was, almost destroyed, then it became important. And Palmyra, because of the Russian, it is part of the Cold War rhetoric operating. Even Palmyra is bigger than all these people fighting and all these rhetorics.
Right, and there's a palm dance between them.
Sorry, we have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry, beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I just wanted to contribute to the discussion. I was actually just in Heidelberg for a conference about heritage, and it very much echoed what you're saying, because all the focus was basically on the digital media as a solution to the destruction of heritage. And I thought, so I agree with kind of what you're saying. That the discussion is not about celebrating basically digital reconstruction of stone, because as my colleague just said, it is about the destruction of heritage. Heritage is not stone; it's communities, it's relationship to the past that is being destroyed. Which is what's happening in Aleppo, what's happening in Yemen. So this is that is where, if in the West, a helpful discussion would be, well, stop, let's say, in Yemen, to sending weapons to Saudi Arabia, rather than, constructing digital, I don't know what, heritage. So that's like the...
And that's a discussion you'll never hear. You don't hear about Saudi Arabia's relationship with bombing of Yemen. You don't hear about that. Yemen's sort of disregarded in at least the States. I'm not speaking for the world, I'm speaking for the States. Yemen is disregarded. But this conversation is very good. This is exactly what I wanted. I said in the beginning, I don't have answers, I want input, and I thank you very much for that.
I think you just want a final addendum. I think you gave me careful about saying, let's not think about digital reconstruction while we're selling arms to the Saudis. And again, it's a bit like saying we shouldn't give any aid money to India because they're sending rockets up to the moon. There's such fantastic separate issues. I don't think, again, we have to do one at the expense of the other. So we suggest we forget digital attempts to rescue heritage, because we should all spend all that money lobbying for Yemen.
I'm not at all saying you should. This is my job. I'm clearly not saying you should dismiss digital attempts. That's my job, is to collect
that. It's a very polarized argument. I don't think it has to. I think we should do both. And then what's happening here is an absolute disgrace.
But we should push back against the digital utopia idea.
It is utopian, and that is part of the problem. It's seen as a very... We're all doing good work.
No, it's not enough. I mean, it's a tragedy we lost the original, because these are part of the world. They don't just belong to Syria, they belong to the world. This is part of world heritage, steeped in history.
Yeah, but the London Museum is part of world heritage, but Syrians can't go to the London Museum to see, what is world heritage if it's in Berlin and London and Qatar and whatever like that.
I don't understand.
What I'm saying is that
I have no idea what you're saying.
With questions and comments.
I have no idea what you're saying.
I'm saying that, let's say, everything in the London Museum is
Please
world heritage.
use the microphone, and
but that doesn't mean that all the world has access to it, because it's very difficult for anyone to get a visa to the UK.
That's another issue, though. You had a comment? Yeah.
Just I want to draw attention to an article that was written by Nasser Rabat in Arabic. I read it in Arabic. I don't know if in English. He considered Palmyra as a kind of extension to the Eurocentric feeling. That's why Europe was very much interested in Palmyra, because it is historically part of the Roman legacy in the Middle East. So, question for Hatra as well. So probably was not part of that legacy as much. Palmyra was, and that I triggered something.
Yes.
Yeah. And when this also this kind of, I mean, when we say like the heritage of Syria belongs to all of humanity, I mean, the battles, I mean, this has been just kind of slogan that has been used by everybody. But really, I mean, if you're following up on the looting and the number of objects that have been sold in London and in New York and in Munich, actually, you feel like, really? It's not that kind of into practice. It's just something that could be used like
and open it and official.
Sorry, we have just 5 minutes. There's another session here. Please, can I intervene? Yes, yes. Please keep your comments brief though, because we have only 5 minutes.
Thanks. This is responsive.
Yeah, to comment, yes.
Nasser Rabat. I envisage him smoking quietly in the corner. I think we can't just see Palmyra as a Roman city. I think it has Palmyra Aramaic is attested all around the region. It's attested in India and on the east coast of Africa. It has its. I think we have to see it as its own culture rather than just being a Roman city. And I think that that possibility for the hybridization of cultures that you see in Palmyra is actually a very important message that can be embedded in curricula. It's precisely why places like Palmyra and Hatra are so interesting and important, multivalent cities that look to multiple civilizations and blend them in their own distinctive ways. So I think that's why they're such exciting places. So I disagree with Nasser.
I'll let him know we work together.
Thank you everyone for this very lively discussion, and please join me thanking the panelists again. And I'd like to remind you that there's a closing session here in 3 minutes, so please participate for some concluding remarks. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. It's been for me, it's been a true delight. And as I mentioned yesterday morning, my greatest frustration is that we had to run parallel sessions, and there are all these wonderful papers that I did not get to listen to because I had other obligations. But I do intend to, virtually everyone, except for ones that people said they did not want them, especially have told us not to report them, they will be available as soon as we get them available. So if you did miss something, you can listen to it. And so we have just very quick sort of concluding remarks. Before I actually try and make sense of what's been this absolute varied and wonderful conference, David is going to give a very detailed thanks to the very large number of people read by Razia, actually right here, but the large number of people from here and volunteers in the community who made this thing possible. It's been extremely complicated. And so I'm just mentioning that because I also want to thank them, but please save our collective applause for when David thanks them by name. As I'm not a media person, meaning I don't work in media studies. I work on religion and visuality, and sort of theories of promotion and things like that, and representation. So for me, this has actually been a bit of a rich departure. But as I'm sure a lot of you noticed, our ambition here has been to try and to take an expansive view of what actually media studies actually means. So, and this is not out of any one desire to sort of out of the sense that media studies in itself inadequate, but actually to think of media in a outside of the siloed way we frequently actually treat academic topics of great significance frequently. I mean, we all know this. Like gender studies becomes extremely siloed, or whatever, all sorts of things. The use of, text versus image studies, or there are any number of different things which become incredibly siloed. So that was part of our ambition to actually do here, and I personally feel we did accomplish it in the sense that I'm struck by the fact that there's a particular way, and I've seen this in the panels I've been at, that people who work across times and actually across methods were placed and across areas, geographic or cultural areas, were put into conversation with each other in many cases. And I hope you felt that happened for you too. But there's so in that sense, I was really struck by the fact that, and also by the fact that we could put essentially what you might just call generically a historian into a room with a media practitioner, for lack of a better term, and an activist of some particular kind, and that they were something coherent that could emerge out of the panel in those particular cases. So that part for me has been a delight. I said this at the beginning, and I'm going to say it again at the end, that I don't think there's actually, I'm not going to attempt to try and come up with kind of, a beautiful nugget that actually ties the conference together. But I do hope that you had a good time and you met some new friends or new professional colleagues, and we certainly, I think, benefited greatly from your presence here. This is, to my knowledge, this is the first large conference of this kind we've done, or certainly in many years.
In many years, yes, there was one earlier.
So it's actually been wonderful for us, and so I personally would like to extend my thanks to you for coming and participating. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike Morris, the Dean of the School of Communications.
Well, thank you all. It was certainly an enjoyable and interesting conference. I think the greatest testament to that is that at this closing of a conference, usually these things empty out. Here, almost every single seat is taken. So it almost seems there are more people here than when we started. Kind of remarkable, David. Tell us how you do that, will you? David will give the real wrap-up. I do just want to thank you. It's been a privilege to help sponsor this, of course. The work was done by David and his team, and hats off to them. Our thanks as well from the Graduate School of Media and Communications. And come visit us sometime in Nairobi. We're doing interesting things, and we'd be happy to welcome you. Thank you.
So I really am the very last speaker at what I think has indeed been a very enjoyable and very useful conference. And Jamal was trying to find a nugget to sum it up. I'm not quite sure I can do it. I suppose it would be a cliche to say that media matter, but I think what we have seen is that it does matter to understand how the various media, traditional, print, digital, social media, etc., how they are all functioning politically and in other ways as well. So I've certainly learned a lot. We haven't any very specific plans for publication because the papers have been quite diverse in nature. But I think there's enough here for anybody to take the initiative maybe and put together a collection. Who knows, we might be able to do that ourselves. But I'm looking forward to seeing several of the papers appear in various other places as articles in scholarly journals, as op-ed pieces in newspapers, etc. And I hope that when you do that, you'll acknowledge that they were presented here at some point, just to give us a little bit of extra publicity in the wider world. We've got to know each other, to see old friends and acquaintances. It was suggested, and I entirely endorse it, that it would be nice, those of you who are still around this evening, perhaps we could get together somewhere. Not here on premises, but I was thinking of the Institute of Education bar in the student common room. Some of you probably already know it if you're Londoners, but what I'm suggesting is that at 5 o'clock, because I'm teaching at 4 o'clock, but at 5 o'clock, we have set anybody who wants to meet down in the lobby, and we can walk over to the Institute. It's about a 10-minute walk, just down towards Russell Square. But if for any reason you don't manage it at 5 o'clock, I'll say we're going to do a couple of sketches. Yeah, okay. So Bushra there has already prepared some sketch map of how to get there. There is an outside entrance, but it's a bit obscure, but you can always go up to the reception inside, and you may not look like IUE students, but they'll still let you in and point you in the general direction. And it's quite a large area, and in my experience, it doesn't get too crowded. Because some of the other places nearby on a Friday evening will be so crowded, so noisy that you wouldn't be able to hear yourself speak. So that's what I would suggest, those of you who would like to have some after-conference discussion and round up of ideas. So yes, I would like very much to acknowledge a very large number of people who made this conference such a success. I think anybody who's been involved with organising a conference like this knows just how much work is involved, a huge amount of work behind the scenes, and I can promise you that that was the case on this occasion as well. ISMC has a staff of not much over 20, and I think it's fair to say that pretty much everybody was involved in one way or another, either as part of the planning process or more recently just filling up folders, moving furniture around, making sure the IT worked and so on. But I would like to, as I say, acknowledge people individually. Aisha, my Sorwada in the front, who's only been with us for a few weeks, but who found herself plunged into the preparations more or less on the first day. Saima Ali, our HR manager, who has had to go and collect her children, but who was always cool and calm and collected behind the scenes. Bushra Sheikha, who again has not been, well, you've been yet actually, but you've been coping with beginning of term as assistant registrar, but you've also been doing a lot to help. Stephanie Kalbusa, Mohammed Mekdad, both of whom have done a huge amount in the last 2 or 3 days. Dawn Barnes, also quite a recent, quite recently joined the staff, but as marketing manager does know about social media and has been helping and organising things like photography. Charlotte Whiting, somebody else who's been very much involved with helping out, and also runs the publications department. So I don't know if people have been able to take publications catalogues away with them, but do feel free to order books at a special ISMC discount. Yes, Dawn, of course, took over from Alexander Khan, who can't be with us because she's about to deliver a baby, but Alex did a lot before she left. Sylvia, who has been sitting at the back quite quietly, but monitoring the quality of the output as it's gone to far parts of the world, and very much involved also in the initial development of the material, the marketing material. Walid Kali from the library, again, a lot of help. Unexpected. No, how should I put it? It was far beyond the call of duty for you to help us as you did. It's really appreciated. And Reg, Bruni, and Shalina Haji, who run the finance department. So we need effective service from there, and they gave it very willingly and very calmly and efficiently. I mentioned IT, Marcus and Jonathan in the front, who've been with us all day, every day for the last 2 or 3 days. And we've had the benefit of student helpers, so I don't think I see them here. Gohar Ali Shah and Nairozine. Oh, I think you. Yeah. They're not here, but they were very much here yesterday, very much involved, again, with getting the preparations complete. And we've also had the help of our colleagues in Karachi and Nairobi, Kenneth Macharia, Marian and Joki in Nairobi, and Rasul Salam and his colleagues in Karachi. Who have I missed? No, come by. Sorry.
Pedro and Alex.
Yeah, okay.
The library.
Yes, okay. So we are a truly transnational institution, so that we are able to call on our colleagues in different parts of the world for help. And our faculty members, Jamal Ilyas, Michael Meyer, helping to plan and develop a really interesting program. And even shifting furniture around, we had a team here, Norma Graham from the Institute of Ismaili Studies, and the people who were listening to us, the two Fabios, who actually do all the heavy lifting. We're grateful to them. I've already mentioned the volunteers, but I really would like to thank them again for their selfless work that they put in. But last but not least, of course, I know you don't want me to pick on you about it, but I really must. That you've all of you been in touch with Razia Belgi, and Razia has lived and breathed this conference for the last several months while coping with children who wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so that a lot of the work has been done while trying to get Sophie or Aidan settled back. And I would like to say also that Razia's contribution, although she's coped wonderfully with the logistics and doing all the practical matters, but she's contributed far beyond that. The shape of the conference, as we've experienced it, is very much down to Razia, so I'd like to thank Razia especially.